Thousands of Coloradans gathered on President's Day with messages for the current president, many of them unrepeatable on family TV. The anti-Trump protest is the largest demonstration in Denver since the social justice protests of 2020. Our Mark Salinger was there.
On a snowy President's Day in Denver, the president was the target of the protests.
Donald Trump has got to go!
This is the largest crowd we've seen for a single demonstration in Denver since the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement. Thousands of people protesting Donald Trump and the policies he's enacted since he took office. Everyone has their own reason for being here.
It's just a lot of anger and fear.
Brianna Bosch owns Blossom and Branch Farm in Lakewood. She worries her small local business won't be able to survive the new tariffs threatened by Trump.
Tariffs coming from Canada now. Of course, that hits our fertilizer prices, so all of our potash comes from Canada. So that makes our prices skyrocket.
I'm a retiree, 24 years.
George Lee comes from a family of veterans. His father served, he served, his son serves. Now he says he's fighting again.
I'm not fighting for me. I'm an old guy. I'm 75. But I have two kids. I got a 34-year-old daughter and a 32-year-old son. I'm fighting for them. And my daughter is expecting a baby in August, and I'm hoping for a better world for them.
While the number of people here rivaled some protests in 2020, the number of elected officials that joined was far fewer. The governor, mayor, senators, representatives, and most state leaders weren't present to protest the president outside the Capitol walls.
So what I want to see is action in here. Action in here and supporting with lawsuits like we're seeing from the Attorney General. That's going to mean a lot more than just coming out here and getting on a mic.
Ian Thomas Tafoya is a community leader advocating for clean energy. He also ran for mayor of Denver in 2023.
Been here before. This isn't our first time with the Trump administration and the impacts and cuts to the key environmental programs that I work so closely with.
Trump and Musk have got to go!
On a snowy, cold President's Day in Denver, protesters hope marches like this send a message to the White House.
Momentum. I want more people to not feel afraid to speak up.
There were protests back in the summer of 2020 that saw tens of thousands of people gathering in Civic Center Park. To be clear, today's numbers didn't match that, not even close. But there were still a whole lot of people, the most that we've seen since those BLM movements back in 2020. Though last week's protests against the ICE raids here in Colorado also turned out to be quite big. Organizers tell me they're trying to put more protests together in the future, Kyle.
It can be sometimes difficult when you're looking online to see what's getting traction, what's going to get big, right? But these protests were part of a 50-state operation.
There were a lot of people that said that on this President's Day, they are going to protest saying, "This is not my president." That's what they were out saying. There were a whole lot of signs with a whole lot of issues saying, "I don't support this, I don't support that," but they all gathered today as one.
All right, Mark Salinger, thank you. Estes Park turned out today to protest the mass layoffs of staff at Rocky Mountain National Park. That town is incredibly reliant on the millions of visitors who come to the park each year. We still don't know how many Coloradans were impacted by the terminations of government probationary employees, so people who were hired or promoted within the past year or two. They just got cleaned out. Colorado's park system could be dramatically impacted by the layoffs, which included 10% of U.S. Forest Service employees, 5% of National Park Service employees. Democratic Governor Jared Polis says the cuts could impact forest management, wildfire mitigation, watershed protections. Colorado's national parks were already facing staffing shortages, and some seasonal employees had their job offers rescinded during the federal hiring freeze announced last month.
We want their jobs back. We want, summer's coming. It's going to be crazy here. Without the rangers and the seasonal workers, it's just going to be a mess.
If short staffing forces national parks to limit visitors or close trails, campgrounds, could have a significant ripple effect on the communities surrounding the parks. In 2023, the National Park Service estimated some 4 million visitors to Rocky, spent nearly $570 million in that area of our state. Well, thousands of Coloradans got in a favorite holiday weekend pastime today, sitting in parking lots of I-70 ski traffic. High country got more snow on this busy travel day. Front Range didn't see much, but most of the ski resorts picked up at least 2 feet since Friday. This is Silverthorne, where it's been snowing throughout the day, and it'll keep falling into the night. Now, all that snow is great for the state's snowpack. 10% increase there since Friday, not including what fell today. The southern mountains needed it the most. Those areas down there in orange on the map were only at about half to 3/4 of normal. Let's bring in meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen for a look ahead, and it just seems like a holiday tradition, right? Everybody wants to go up and ski, and then lo and behold, snow on that weekend.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you live for the snow, you have to be willing to put up with the impacts. So it's you'll take what you can get there, but I think most people that I know have been willing to wait in traffic to get to that powder. And there's still more to come here. Overnight tonight, we could get another 8 inches in some spots before this storm comes to an end. Let's look at future cast here, the computer modeling here going overnight. It kind of drifts down into the southern part of the state briefly and then comes to an end by about 11 o'clock tomorrow. And we will have a little bit of a shot tonight to get some what we call snow bands, these little narrow strips of snow here across the Front Range. Possibility from now until about 10 o'clock tonight. If you get lucky enough to get under one of these, you get a quick ½ inch of snow, but it looks like the coverage of those is not going to be very large, so most of us probably get a big knot of sandwich. And all this stuff here in gray here, that's Arctic air that's going to be settling in. I'll talk about that cold stuff here coming up in just a few minutes.
NBC News reports the Department of Energy, led by Colorado fracking executive Chris Wright, is now scrambling to unfire nuclear security workers who were terminated in the federal workforce purge being led by billionaire Elon Musk. NBC obtained an email showing the National Nuclear Security Administration is struggling to get in touch with the people who were fired, asking former coworkers to pass along their personal emails. Wright was picked by President Trump to lead the Department of Energy because Wright shares Trump's drill baby drill strategy. Wright has said that there is no climate crisis and that, quote, the hype over wildfires is just hype. But his department's burning need now is to find some of the nuclear security workers they just canned. Now, Wright surely must have known that his department only has limited authority over oil and gas drilling, but that America's doomsday weapons would be his responsibility. Now, that said, according to Vanity Fair, Trump's first-term energy secretary pick, Rick Perry, reportedly didn't realize he'd be in charge of America's nukes. Thankfully, Colorado's Chris Wright does know he's in charge of the nukes. We know he knows because he recently told CNBC that Elon Musk's cost cutters do not have access to America's nuclear secrets, just the workforce stuff. And thankfully, Wright has not proposed combining his lifelong passion, fracking for oil and gas, with his newfound access to America's nuclear weapons, because we've tried that in Colorado. It was 1969, Project Rulison, a 40-ton underground nuke blown up in Garfield County. It loosed a bunch of natural gas, but made it radioactive. Americans were naturally hesitant to cook with natural gas they feared would make them glow. The decades-long cleanup of America's attempt to nuke baby nuke in Colorado was carried out by, you guessed it, the Department of Energy. Yet another lesser-known function of that department. If you happen to have the personal email of a newly fired Department of Energy employee, maybe send them a thank you for their work and let them know the office is looking for them.
Tonight's next question comes from a viewer named Jenny. In the wake of anti-vaccine activist RFK Jr.'s confirmation as Health and Human Services Secretary, Jenny told us that she's worried about a drop in vaccination rates, specifically wondering if adults should re-up their childhood vaccines for diseases like measles and polio.
All right, so Jen, we get the concern, right? Given Colorado's already lagging vaccination rates and the recent outbreak of measles in Texas and New Mexico. But that does not mean, doctors say, that fully vaccinated adults should just run out and get an extra dose of vaccines. The CDC recommends adult boosters for some vaccines, like the tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis vaccine. But a lot of childhood vaccines, like measles and polio, are meant to provide decades of protection. And doctors say that a booster might not be helpful for adults.
The truth is, most adults don't need a booster for vaccines such as those for measles and polio. Most of them already have the protection provided by these vaccines because the protection lasts for a lifetime. It's very durable for things like measles and polio. Although each vaccine is a little bit different, and there are some cases where it is recommended that an adult gets a booster dose of the vaccine.
That's David Higgins. He's a pediatrician and preventative medicine specialist at the CU Anschutz Medical Campus. So while polio and measles might be getting the headlines as people worry about a rollback of vaccines in America, Higgins tells us that the vaccine-preventable diseases with the widest impact right now are things that adults can get vaccinated for.
While adults are appropriately concerned about the resurgence of things like measles or polio with dropping vaccination rates, it's important that every adult make sure they're up to date on influenza and COVID-19 vaccines, as well as for adults over 75 or those over 60 who are at higher risk, they should also have an RSV vaccine.
As always, if you have any questions about vaccine safety or whether you need a booster, you should talk to your doctor or your uncle on Facebook. Thank you for your support for your latest Word of Thanks microgiving project. You are raising funds for Canine Partners of the Rockies, which spends about 2 years training service dogs and then provides those dogs to Coloradans who need them at no cost. You raise more than $45,000 through your one-time donations and your monthly recurring gifts to the Word of Thanks Fund that boost every nonprofit we feature. Your microgiving has brought in more than $14 million for nonprofits in every corner of Colorado. The goodness continues every week. So if you know of an impactful organization that could use a boost from all of us, email me, next@9news.com, or text NEXT at 303-871-1491. Seems like it would be a good time to be in the business of making those chains that people need for their vehicles, because Colorado legislators are considering a new business model forcing folks to chain up on days like today.
Last night at 4 o'clock, 70 volunteers descended upon the Garden and Home Show.
I love that dude's shirt. Once the Home and Garden Show is uprooted, all kinds of good folks step in to ensure that the plants left behind do not go to waste. That's next. Hey, may I make a recommendation? Something that is not from our news team, but I think you will find interesting and worth your time.
How is wolf restoration going, and where is it headed?
The divide between people who support wolf reintroduction and the folks who are living with the impacts of it has never been greater.
So earlier this month, Colorado Public Radio's climate reporter Sam Brash moderated a really thoughtful conversation about one of the toughest topics in the news right now, the reintroduction of wolves to the western slope. It's about 45 minutes long, packs in a ton of perspective from conservation managers, ranchers, state legislators. They talk about what has gone right and what's gone wrong since wolves were loosed in 2023. They also discuss what it might take to overcome the urban-rural divide and reach a common path forward. This conversation offers some great insight, especially for us urban Coloradans who are kind of removed from the reality on the ground, and a great reminder that we can still have civil conversation about issues that divide people. You can find that full conversation from Colorado Public Radio linked in Next social media channels and on the recommendation page of 9news.com. Well, there's another slip show on I-70 today. Out-of-state truckers finding out fast what happens when it snows. There's a bipartisan bill at the state capitol that would make going up the hill a little easier on those truckers once they realize the bad conditions. It would allow private companies to set up shop along I-70 and other mountain roads, selling and installing tire chains. They have similar setups in Washington, Oregon, and California. Under Colorado law, all commercial vehicles and two-wheel drive cars traveling in the high country are required to carry chains September 1st to May 31st, but you get out-of-state truckers that just aren't aware of the law. The bill would also require rental car companies to tell their customers about Colorado's traction laws. The bill passed its first committee hearing last week. Knowledge is power, Corey, but you can't put knowledge on your tires to keep from sliding off the road and taking 5 other cars with you. You need chains.
Exactly. We try to give everybody a heads up to what's coming, but there always seems to be trouble. So maybe something like that might just fly and be okay with us out here in Colorado. We have a cold Arctic air intrusion here. We call it a polar vortex. We used to call them an Arctic cold front, but now we call them polar vortexes. My clicker is kind of like yours at TV. No matter how hard you push that thing, it does not get the picture to roll. But what you're looking at there is something that we have seen several times over the last couple of months here. As we look at the modeling for polar vortex here, the gray and aqua colors, there it goes, we're looking at it there. That's what's coming our way. Pretty unusual to see an Arctic cold front of this caliber this late in February, but we may see some records fall as a result of that, coming very close to northeast Colorado here by Wednesday morning, and that moves out on Thursday. We've got some cold weather alerts here, some cold weather advisories, and extreme cold warnings, wind chills getting there down to near negative 30. Here's the forecast for tomorrow. We'll be in the negative wind chills here along the Front Range. Negative 18 is the magic number that we look for normally, because that is when the frostbite sets in just 30 minutes. So it's going to be a rough ride for 2 days, but we've got warm weather ahead if you want to stick around.
Anne-Marie Hochhalter, one of the survivors of the Columbine shooting, has passed away. If you know her, you know that her life since the shooting has been defined by her strength and her grace. She was 17 years old when she was shot, paralyzed from the waist down. Many Coloradans came to know her story in particular when she lost her mother just months after the Columbine shooting. Then in 2016, Anne-Marie did something extraordinary. She publicly forgave Sue Klebold, mother of one of the shooters. She told us at the time that she, quote, wanted to show people that forgiveness is possible and that holding on to bitterness and anger just ruins yourself. Anne-Marie Hochhalter passed away over the weekend. Inspiration to many in Colorado, but especially the community of families and survivors forever bound by what happened at Columbine. She was 43 years old. We'll be right back. When the Colorado Garden and Home Show wraps up, they don't bring in the state's largest compost bin to the back dock. No, instead, a group of volunteers sets out to take more than 8,000 plants and arrangements to seniors and folks who receive Meals on Wheels.
If you want happiness in your life, then you should give and you should volunteer. My name is Peter Krause, and I'm a founding member of the Rotary Club of Broomfield Crossing. Today, the Rotary clubs in Colorado partner up with the Denver Garden and Home Show, and we distribute the flowers from the Denver Garden and Home Show to senior care facilities around the Denver metropolitan area. The name of this program is called Flower Power. Last night at 4 o'clock, 70 volunteers descended upon the Garden and Home Show. It took about an hour and a half with 70 volunteers. And we have clubs from Parker, Aurora, Broomfield, Arvada, Westminster, all over the metropolitan area. 3,800 flowers went out just now. Nice. Woo-hoo!
Our Littleton Rotary partners are bringing over some flowers and be delivered to over 700 of our clients tomorrow morning to bring extra joy and that warmth of spring that's hopefully ahead. My name is Gail Melges, and I'm the Director of Operations for Nourish Meals on Wheels. Because it's more than a meal. We're trying to deliver that food and friendship and connection to the community. Oftentimes our drivers are the only people that they'll interact with throughout the day.
We make it work. We made it work last year. We make it work every year.
We couldn't deliver flowers like this to all 700 of our clients without the support of the community.
I can't even tell you how fulfilling it is. So when we show up, the smiles on their faces is a payment that you cannot get doing anything else in the world. It's an incredible collaboration, and it shows the power of community.
Tuesday, Thursdays, we're over 6:50.
Can you imagine how good it smells in there? We're back with your feedback next. Feedback tonight from a next viewer named Randy, who says that she was one of the Department of Energy employees, as she said, taken out in the Thursday purge. I'll read this to you here at length. Randy says, I'm devastated but determined to keep moving forward. I just hope that the lost jobs don't ripple too far across the public and private sectors. Randy says the cascade of consequences that will impact everybody. Randy finishes, here's to brighter days ahead.